Colonel, tell us about your new book, and you've spent a lot of time with soldiers. Tell us about some of their stories.
The last 12 years, Fox has had me keeping company with heroes. This book is part war story and part love story. It's the first one of the trilogy of American Heroes books that actually focuses pretty much on 50-50 on the warrior and the family. And that's largely because that family part has never really been told well. We did a documentary on it called Home Front for Fox News Channel. When I got back from doing that, I was with the battalion overseas in Ramadi. We had a crew that was allowed by the Marine Corps to be with the families down in Camp Lejeune. And of course, a lot of bad things were happening in Anbar province. It was about the bloodiest place on the planet. When I got back home, my wife said to me, "You really never really understood what we were going through back at home, did you?" I said, "Well, gosh, we at that point been married for over 35 years." And I said, "Yeah, I guess you're right, we didn't." And you're so focused on what's happening right there around you. You've got the responsibility of keeping yourself and others alive in combat, and what the mission that's before you, the things that are happening, and the adrenaline and the camaraderie and the commitment. Back home, we've got anxiety, uncertainty, particularly for the families that live off base, and hoping against all hope that the chaplain's never going to walk up to your front door and give you the worst news you could ever get in your life. And so all those responsibilities of being a single parent, largely in the civilian community that doesn't understand them, first war since the Revolution, in which every warrior, everyone fighting this war is a volunteer. That hasn't happened since the American Revolution. The families have never been put under such duress since the Revolution. When my mom and dad got married in 1940, 16.5 million men and women were in uniform by the time I was born in 43. And even though Dad was gone for over nearly 2 years, the effect of that was everybody knew the name of somebody serving. Well, today, almost nobody knows the name of somebody serving. 16.5 million men and women in uniform in World War II. Population of the country, less than 180 million. Today, 330 million Americans, 1.5 million in the active armed forces.
It was more of a shared sacrifice.
Yeah, and there was more of an awareness and appreciation for the sacrifice that was being made. And today it's, blissfully unaware. Our colleagues in the media have done a lousy job of covering them. The usual thing that you'll see is some terrible event that's occurred and an attempt to make it look like that's what everybody does. And I guess maybe that's how you get an Edward R. Murrow Award or a Pulitzer, is to call them names and point out bad things. In fact, 99.9% of them are great Americans. They put themselves at risk, in harm's way. Their families have sacrificed enormously. What they really want is they want to come back to America and be productive. And so you've got, in this book, a lot of them have been badly wounded. And what you're seeing today is an effort on the part of the VA to ignore it. Look, there are some really good Veterans Administration hospitals and people who care in the VA, but it's a tiny fraction of that enormous bureaucracy that somewhere has a motto: nothing is too good for the troops, and that's just what we'll give them. Nothing. And so 20 months in some cases to get into the system. How the hell can that be when you got a guy who's missing both legs? And say, oh no, you've got to fill out form X and Y and Z and come back repeatedly, and we really want to make you a victim. They don't want to be victims. What they want is a productive job. They don't want sympathy or pity. And we have failed them in the media and in the private sector by not giving them those jobs. Double the unemployment rate for the national average in their age group for those who've served in this war. How can that be? It's the best educated, best trained, most committed military we've ever had. They understand responsibility, accountability, they get the job done. A Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps has had more responsibility than the CEO of any company out here.
Right.
Lives, millions of dollars of equipment, safety, all the right things, and yet our colleagues, think about this, I just came back from my 57th embed, and there's the headline. Navy vet kills 12 at Navy Yard. The fact that this guy was a Navy vet had absolutely nothing to do. But if you're an HR person responsible for hiring, where you work or anywhere else out here, the first thing you think of, oh gosh, here's 2 applicants, high school dropout or military vet. Gee, I better take the high school dropout because we never know when this guy's going to go post-wise. It's outrageous.
What is the answer, and also on a personal level, how did there been more suicides from soldiers coming back from overseas and actual casualties? How did you deal with coming back home from Vietnam and
Well,
and you guys got a worse reception?
What happened to the Vietnam vet should never have happened. It ought never to happen again. That's one of the reasons I started Freedom Alliance way back in 1990, was to make sure it didn't happen again. To a certain extent, it is happening. The VA is still largely incompetent, largely uncaring, enormous bureaucracy, same as it was then. Second, PTS is now recognized more often, and thankfully so, but the treatment for it in the VA, unlike the active military, has often been, look, here's a bag full of pill bottles, take these and see which ones work. Wherein, if you read the story about my Navy corpsman who saved my life on the battlefield, right there in the introduction of this book, and you read about what he does to treat them in the military now, right? That needs to be replicated across the VA. Second problem that happens is, once you start deciding at the top levels of our government, we're not going to win the war. We're going to put our tail between our legs and run. That's what happened in April of 1975. That's what's happened in Iraq. It better not happen in Afghanistan, because that drives people into thinking, oh dear, the sacrifice that's been made. Why? All that blood, all those limbs, all that treasure, for what? My theory is that if the American people understand the sacrifice, these guys certainly understand it, and their mates, then it's certainly worth winning the war. And that can still be done in Afghanistan. It's too late for Iraq. It can still be done in Afghanistan. And what I'm saying is the job situation of the VA and that attitude of just get out now, which is coming from the top of this administration, is what's driving the downside of all this.
Your class at the Naval Academy has had a lot of leadership in the government. What do you see coming up later on? Do you think we have a vacuum of leadership at the top, or do we need?
Well, look, I think we still have a bloated Pentagon. I mean, the 5-sided wastebasket has more admirals in it than it does ships in the Navy. I mean, heck, we ought to at least have parity so every admiral has his own ship. You've got enormous expenditures for stuff that are way beyond what we need. We need to replace the equipment that's been worn out in this war. But what they're doing is they're cutting the benefits for the families.
Yeah, they just now
I just heard
this
a Republican member of the House Armed Services Committee stand up and say the generous benefits that families and service members have enjoyed have got to stop. Well, that's a formula for wrecking the best military the world's ever known.
Right.
And you can build widgets like that. I mean, that's how quickly you can do it if you've got the R&D that's already been done. You can't build a competent, combat experienced military overnight. It takes years to do that. If you start flushing out the mid-grade officers and non-commissioned officers who are the real leaders, and they simply disappear off into the sunset, you will wreck the finest military that's ever been used. Second thing, we have the lowest proportion of military veterans in Congress we've ever had. Why? Well, in part because Congress and politics are so vicious. There ought to be more of them. And I don't give a flip whether they're Republicans or Democrats. I'm a Republican, as you know.
Right.
But you know what? We need military veterans who understand how important our military is serving in the Congress of the United States, who understand it's not just the widgets, it's the people who run, carry, and use the weapons and the equipment.
In Vietnam, you got a Silver Star and 2 Purple Hearts. A lot of people may not be aware of that. Can you tell us about your combat experience
Look. They always give the officers more awards than they should, and rarely give the enlisted guys the recognition that they deserve. Purple Heart is is your recognition that you slowed down and didn't duck fast enough. Mercifully, I've been able to keep pretty safe in this war. I got hurt a couple of times. About the greatest compliment I've gotten in this war was some footage that was shot when I was doing a stand-up piece. Camera's on a tripod, walking toward the camera, sniper shot. Next thing, I'm in the mud and the sewage, laying in the dirt, and you can hear the Marine gunner because I've got my microphone fastened to my flak jacket. And the Marine gunner who's behind me say, "Blinking amazing how fast an old man can move when he's properly motivated." Well, I've been able to keep up with 25-year-olds wearing a flak jacket and helmet now for 57 embeds. Hopefully can continue to do so for a while.
And speaking of which, you look great. You haven't changed in the 15 years since I've seen you. In the 1990s, you ran for Senate in Virginia and lost when a third-party candidate came in, and we had something similar happen in Virginia in the governor's race.
Yep.
Are you open for running for office again, or?
Well, I've been invited to do so many times, but you notice all these books are dedicated to the same woman, and I know that the Secret Service cannot protect me from her. So before I run, I'd have to get her vote.
Right. Okay. One last question. I know you have some people waiting to meet you. What are and I've been in bed overseas myself, and I'm amazed at what the soldiers do on a daily basis that people don't know about. What are the soldiers telling you when you're over there, and what is the message that they want you to tell?
Well, you know, I'll show you this footage. Unfortunately, I can't share it with you because it's on Fox. Young Marine captain on his second combat tour who feels very strongly that they do not want this war to end the way Vietnam ended. They understand it. There's a tie-in, because I always ask the tens of thousands I've covered, why did you come into service? And they'll say, because of 9/11. So I'm out there last July on my 57th embed, and I'm talking to guys who are 20 years old. Do the math. Those guys were in 5th or 6th grade when 9/11 happened. And I said, well, you know, did you see it? No, our teacher wouldn't let us see it, but I know about it. And I'm here because of 9/11. Because I don't want it to happen again. So why did you pick this particular branch of the military? And they'll say, well, I had an uncle or a dad or even a granddad who served in Vietnam, and I understand that. Now, to me, those kinds of connections are important. I think that those reflect a lot of why we have people in the service today as dedicated as they are. And I'll show you this video because it's powerful. It's that kind of commitment. We do not want to lose this war. We fought too hard for it. We've lost too many of our friends, and we've lost a lot of limbs and lives trying to make it happen.
It's too much invested.
Way too much.
Well, thank you, Colonel, and thank you for visiting North Carolina, and welcome back.
It's great to be home.
And good luck with your book, and thank you again for telling the soldier stories and for your service as well.
If you've got time in this segment, mention that. When's it going to air?
It'll be this weekend.
Well, if it's before Saturday midnight,
okay,
I'm giving $1 to Freedom Alliance for every book bought on Amazon.com.
Okay.
Well, I say every book.
Yeah.
Every one of these books.
All right, Homefront, new book. Okay.
Bought on Amazon.com between now and midnight, I will give $1 to Freedom Alliance so they can keep those scholarships coming for youngsters who've lost a parent.
And tell us about Freedom Alliance. A lot of people may not know about your charity real quick.
Freedom Alliance is an organization devoted to soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardsmen, and Marines, and their families. And so we've given out, for example, this year alone, $2 million in college scholarships to 207 youngsters who lost a parent in the line of duty. We do things like hero hunts. We do hero holidays for the families. We let them take a retreat with a family that's suffering. For those who are in the hospitals, we help them get to the hospitals to see their loved ones. The government pays for some of that. You may remember when the government was shut down, they didn't. So they turned to Freedom Alliance and a handful of others to help make that happen. That's what we do. Chaplain calls us and says, we got a family up here that's suffering financial distress. There's no room at Fisher House. Can you help us? $1,000 wire transferred immediately. And we do that all over the place. We were with a young Marine, lost both legs. He's now in college. That's exactly what happened with him and his family. And he came to the Myrtle Beach Costco to see us, just to thank us. On his honeymoon, no Yeah.
That's dedicated. Yeah, I've heard about the charity through, I think, Sean Hannity, and sounds like a really good.
Very supportive.
Very good,
Yeah.
so.
Fox and Sean particularly, yeah. Let me show you that footage.
Okay, thanks, Colonel.
Sure.
Thank you very much.